Today I'm going to be coloring this cute little sea turtle that I drew for our craft lounge. And I'm going to be starting with my lightest green on his fins and face. This is a G40. And notice I'm coloring in small circles. And I evenly soak my paper so that he is very smooth and vibrant green. Then I'm going to come in and add some shadows. This is with a YG63. And you want to add plenty of shadows so that you have more contrast in your artwork. If your artwork doesn't have enough contrast, it's going to look very flat and not very exciting. So be sure to add plenty of contrast. I'm going back with my lighter color and I'm just blending those edges together so that it is nice and smooth. And then the whole area looks like it is very clean, smooth skin. Next, I'm going to color the greens on his shell. If you can see, the light is coming from this direction, so I know that the back of his shell is already going to be a darker green. So I'm going to take the YG63, which is the shadow color I used on his fins, and I'm going to use that as my base color for his shell. Then I'm using a G28 as the shadow for that because the G28 gives me a deeper green than I would get if I were using a YG67, which would be the natural shade for the YG63. And again, I go back with my lighter green, blend those together so that it gives me a nice smooth blend. I'm going to add just a touch of shadow under the scarf and deepen the shadow on the far edges just a little bit more. Last, I'm going to do just a trace of the lighter green on the edge of his shell. All right, now we're going to work on the tan. I've picked these colors today to specifically match some tan and deep green papers that I'm going to be using on my final project. So I want all the tan areas a very specific shade of tan. And so I chose E40 as my lightest tan, working in an E31, and then deepening those shadows with an E35. So here on his belly, I used the E40, shadowed with an E31, and then went back with the E40. On the back part of his shell, I need to darken it a bit more. So there's my E35, used as the deepest shadow. Then I come back with my E31. Then I leave just tiny hints of that base E40. He's going to have a much darker shell. Now that my fins are nice and dry, I'm going to come back in with my middle green, my YG63, and you'll see in the picture there are little spots. I'm just going to pick those spots out with just the tip of my brush. Very lightly add in the spots. We'll add a few on top of his head. You don't want to do that while his fin is still wet because it will blend in. We want those to be nice and crisp. Then I'm just going to add a little bit more of the deep shadows just to give it some more contrast and make it look more exciting. It's always a good idea to stop, look at it again from a distance and figure out where you need more shadows. And now I'm ready for my red and white areas. In this case, I'm going to be adding my gray shadows first. And I'm using a BV31. This gives me a nice blue-violet shadow. And I'm just picking out all of my shadow areas first. I know that his hat, the white areas on his hat, are going to have a hint of shadow, as will his scarf and the candy canes. Then I'm going to come in and do all of the reds. On his hat, I'm starting with an R22. This is a very light red. I'm using just a hint of it. Then I'm coming in with my darker R29. Again, notice how much of a contrast there is. I want these colors to really pop. And last, I add my darkest R59. Now I can come back with my R29 and blend that darker red in. And then I come back again with my R22, my lightest shade, and I wash the middle and the darker colors together. Fill in any little holes so that I have a very smooth red. Now on his scarf, I'm going to just evenly color that with my reds. And I want to be very careful because red is such an intense dye, it likes to bleed. And so a little goes a long way with your reds. Although I'm coloring evenly, I don't want to over soak my paper. Now I'm going to add just a hint of shadow with my R59. And there we've got his scarf shadowed. I'm going to touch up his hat there and there to add more contrast back in. Now let's finish up with the candy canes. Just a little dab, my R29. That's all that it takes. Now our turtle looks nice and evenly colored. Let's give him some water behind him. I'm taking B00. I'm coloring in circles close to the turtle and lifting up as I get further away from him so that I leave a trailing edge. This is really important when I come back in with my blender because I'm going to fade all of that blue back in towards the colored area. Very evenly, when you're close to the image, lifting up. It's okay if it's a little streaky because it's all going to be blended out anyways. I've got a nice soft watery blue all the way around my turtle. Now I'm going to come in with my colorless blender and notice how I'm starting way out at the edge and I'm pushing the color back in towards the turtle. What it's doing is it's softening up those streaks that I had, and it's just making it fade that much easier to the white of the paper. Usually I would start with even a lighter shade of blue, but the lighter blue doesn't show up very well on the camera. So I wanted to go a little dark just to show you better on the screen what it will look like. So I want to work very evenly, that way I don't get any streaks. And when I'm all done, I can look at my picture and it should look nice and smooth. Looks like he's floating in water. Looks like I got a little outside the line on the red there, so I'm just very carefully taking my colorless blender and I am touching up any mistakes there we go for the new release of our craft lounge.